For a brief time before I started really making YouTube videos, my primary creative outlet was a podcast. And on that podcast, I had started a series looking at the history and larger cultural context of the Kardashian-Jenner family. And that series stalled out for a few reasons. One is that I just got distracted with other stuff. Two is that I was kind of trying to do like a chronological retrospective at the time, where each episode would be a different era in the Kardashian-Jenner family history, and given all the different discussions I wanted to have about specific events from those eras, and then what it all means in a larger cultural context, the episodes were long and thematically very disjointed, which admittedly this video will also be. Hopefully not as disjointed, but definitely long. And then 3 is that no one else really seemed that interested in the series. Of all the different videos and podcast episodes I've ever made, the ones talking about the Kardashians are definitely the least popular. And I do understand why. The Kardashians are some of the most overexposed people in the world. Even though there's clearly enough public interest in them to keep the family relevant, their ability to always have their names mentioned in some headline somewhere makes other people pretty sick of hearing about them. And because of the ways the family's public image has been constructed with a strong emphasis on consumerism, a lot of people assume that exploring the Kardashians as subject matter is an inherently shallow endeavor. I assure you, though, it's not. Celebrity culture, however vain and ridiculous it sometimes seems on the surface, has a wildly important influence on human existence. It impacts media, politics, the economy, interpersonal relationships, and the Kardashian-Jenner family is like celebrity culture distilled into one family unit, or one franchise of personalities. So they are important. I also just find the family fascinating on like a human level. They are weird people with weird lives that have achieved something that like no one else ever really has, and that I also think no one else would really want to. So I always intended on rebooting that retrospective series at some point, albeit with some changes. Obviously now it's a video series rather than an audio podcast. And rather than writing each episode to overview an entire era of the family, I'm going to just segregate each part into more isolated topics of conversation. And still, I was gonna try to keep everything in like more or less chronological order. Start with stuff related to the family's background. You know, maybe a video about Robert Kardashian's work on the O.J. Simpson case. One about Kris Jenner's early management of Caitlyn Jenner's career. Then move into the rest of the family's rise to fame, with the beginnings of the reality show, Kim's friendship with Paris Hilton, the sex tape, etc. That way I could still feel like we were exploring the family's story on a roughly linear timeline, even if each individual video had a more focused theme. But something has kind of thrown that plan off. Because a Kardashian topic that I always assumed I would get to eventually, somewhere down the road, has become unfortunately more relevant recently, to the point where I don't want to wait to talk about it anymore. I want to talk about it right now. Because on January 3rd of this year, 2024, Kim Kardashian announced via TMZ that she and Glu Mobile were shutting down the Kim Kardashian Hollywood app, with the game entering its sunset phase of its discontinuation upon announcement. When I read that news, I was unironically devastated. I have been playing Kim Kardashian Hollywood on and off since it came out, and I had very recently gotten back into it. I had even made it my New Year's resolution to make it to top 10 A-lister, which was delusional, but then 3 days into the year, the game was shutting down. The game was shut down, essentially. As I'm recording this, the app is still on my phone. I can still play it. But since it's a game that runs entirely off of servers, a lot of the gameplay relied on the app's consistent updates. And now that it's not updating anymore, certain features are just completely gone. Including my favorite, the thing I play most on the app, the Show Your Style event. So I'm really sad about this. Not just because I personally enjoyed playing the game, though that is a big motivating factor, but also because the loss of this game represents a bigger loss for us culturally, and I'm being 100% dead-ass serious about that. This is a relic of history that will soon disappear if it hasn't already by the time I'm uploading this, and that really sucks. So let's back up and talk about how we got here. Kim Kardashian Hollywood is, or was, a free-to-play mobile role-playing game released for iOS and Android on June 24th, 2014. The face of the game is obviously Kim Kardashian, but the app's origins predate Kim's involvement. In December of 2011, Glu Mobile released an app called Stardom A-List, which was then followed by Stardom Hollywood in February of 2013. Glu was already a leader in the mobile app space, having developed multiple popular gaming apps like Diner Dash and Deer Hunter. Many of Glu Mobile's titles, though, were the result of acquisitions made by the company around the late 2000s and early 2010s. Deer Hunter, for example, premiered as a Windows PC game about a decade before mobile apps even existed. The Stardom series was one of Glu Mobile's most promising pieces of original IP, but it wasn't doing as well as the properties they bought with pre-established audiences. So, around February of 2013, Glu Mobile CEO Niccolo De Masi took a trip to Hollywood with the intention of signing 5 or 6 celebrities to become the faces for games which would reuse Glu Mobile engines, but exploit the pre-established popularity of each celebrity's brand. The engines of the original Stardom series of games were then adapted to debut multiple celebrity-fronted apps with similar designs and features. Kim Kardashian Hollywood was the first, but shortly after there was Britney Spears' American Dream, Nicki Minaj The Empire, Katy Perry Pop, and an app fronted by Kim's half-sisters Kendall and Kylie. The app was called Kendall and Kylie. Kim Kardashian Hollywood was the only smash hit success. The other games either flopped immediately or faded into obscurity over the next few years, or maybe just a few months. It seems both Britney Spears' American Dream and Kendall and Kylie were shut down sometime around mid-2022. Katy Perry Pop appears to have shut down less than a year after launching, but the exact date isn't known for certain. Based off the fact that November 20th, 2016 was the last time it was seen on app download charts, PocketGamer.biz speculates that it was probably removed from the App Store on November 21st, but I couldn't find any information on if the game went into a sunset phase after that, or if the servers were just completely shut down that day, because there was literally no prior announcement. That's still better than Nicki Minaj The Empire, though. I have no clue when that app closed. All I could find was this change.org petition started in January of this year, urging Glu Mobile to bring it back. Currently, it has 6 signatures out of its goal of 10. Now, maybe you noticed that the other stars Glu Mobile recruited for this venture were all a certain type of celebrity, musicians. The only exception is, of course, Kendall and Kylie, and though their app was nowhere near as successful as the one released by their big sister Kim, it was notably more popular than the ones released for Britney Spears, Nicki Minaj, or Katy Perry. That may be surprising given the dedicated fan bases each of those pop stars command, but the original Stardom was a lifestyle-focused, narrative role-playing game. Music production inspires features of Britney, Katie, and Nicki's apps, but Kim was always the unbeatable candidate for this project because hers is a lifestyle-focused brand, a brand that thrives on stoking interest in the Kardashian-Jenner family's personal narratives, which then in turn stokes interest in each family member's respective business ventures. Stardom's main character was an up-and-coming actress trying to make it big in Hollywood. Similarly, the first season of Keeping Up with the Kardashians is all about Kim K's attempts to make it as an up-and-coming Hollywood socialite. The parallels between the app's origins and Kim's overall brand allowed Kim's version of the game to become integrated into her life in similar ways that a reality show would. And the app features not just a cartoon depiction of Kim, who helps the player navigate the game, it contains the likeness of other Keeping Up characters, like members of Kim's family, her longtime best friend Jonathan, or some of her other business associates. In true Kardashian form, many of those characters are even given dialogue in the game that promotes one of their real-life counterparts' businesses. Pretty good deal if you're one of Kim's siblings. You get to use her game to promote your brand without actually having to do anything other than just signing a piece of paper that says that you give the developers license to use your name and likeness. Sounds great? Sounds easy? Who wouldn't want that? Well,
can I read you a little letter that I received via registered mail today to you?
To me?
This is a cease and desist for the Kim Kardashian West video game.
What?
This cease and desist order is to inform you that your persistent actions, including but not limited to asking me to sign over the rights for you to use my likeness, have become unbearable.
Who is that from?
Kourtney Kardashian.
So, during an episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, Kourtney takes offense to Kim's assumption that Kourtney will sign over her name and likeness without receiving any sort of compensation for her character's inclusion in the game, even though Kim herself also isn't receiving any additional money for her family's inclusion.
You don't think she makes money off this?
She makes money. It's not like you buy a Chloe person. Like, I'm just like a free add-on.
Yeah, but you're adding to the game.
Kourtney later says it's not about the money, she just didn't like the way that Kim asked her.
You never asked as a favor, never once. So if you presented it as a favor and said, do you want to do me a favor? And will you guys please do this for me?
And also, she has too much going on to be in a video game, even though she didn't actually, have to do anything to be in it.
I don't care to do random things. You don't have to do one thing. But I don't care to do more than I'm doing. Oh, you're too overexposed?
But then even though it's not about the money, supposedly, she finally agrees to be in the game once Kim offers her money.
I'll get your check over ASAP. It's not about the check. It is, though.
It's a very silly and possibly fake conflict. I'm sure at least Kourtney sending Kim a cease and desist wasn't an organic response. She was probably escalating the drama intentionally to increase the tension on the show. But if you've watched enough of the Kardashians, these kinds of fights are really common with Kourtney and Kim specifically. The two kind of hate each other, or rather, Kourtney kinda hates Kim.
It's like you're just a witch, and I hate you.
Okay.
So there might have been a little setup involved with the app character drama, but even if that's the case, I don't have any doubt that some real feelings of resentment were getting flared up in the process, no matter if it started as a plot device for the show or not. And that's one of the main things that makes the Kardashian empire so fascinating. A lot of it is made up of absolute bullshit. But mixed into all that bullshit are genuine human emotions. Emotions which frequently give the shows and the overall brand a kind of dark undertone that I don't even think the family means to present. Kim and Kourtney's fight regarding the inclusion of Kourtney's character in Kim's app gave the game an extra bit of publicity, not merely being featured in the series in a fluffy plotline about Kim's new business venture, but getting caught in the middle of a dramatic feud between two series leads. It also gave the app's gameplay extra lore that only those consuming Kardashian media could be keen to. When I was playing the game, every time Kourtney's character popped up, I got a little annoyed. Her digital presence on the app is a symbolic reminder of a sibling rivalry that can at times be genuinely upsetting to witness. And still, the inclusion of Kourtney doesn't signify as unpleasant a history as the exclusion of two other very important Kardashian universe personalities. The fight between Kourtney and Kim is captured in episode 2 of Keeping Up's 10th season. In the final 2 episodes of the season, Kim is looking to add 2 more family members to the game, Kourtney's then boyfriend and baby daddy Scott Disick, and the sister's former stepfather Caitlyn Jenner. As depicted on Keeping Up, upon hearing Kim's offer, Scott starts going the Kourtney route, demanding compensation for a gig he actually doesn't have to do any work on. Kim's final decision to not include Scott, though, came after he disappeared on an all-night bender and wound up photographed in France cozying up to another woman while Kourtney remained in LA, unsure of his whereabouts and abandoned to take care of their 3 young children alone.
Mason sent him a text at like 9 o'clock at night. And then today he wrote me at 1:30 and said, I wanted to tell you to tell the kids I love them and anything that's ever comes up bad about me wasn't their fault.
I don't think she knows where he is.
Scott struggled with substance abuse, especially alcoholism, throughout his and Kourtney's relationship. His spiral around seasons 10 and 11 became particularly intense as he was still grieving the recent and sudden death of his parents, both of whom passed within 2 months of one another. Shortly after their deaths, Kourtney announced her pregnancy with hers and Scott's 3rd child, the shock of which overwhelmed and destabilized him further. After almost a decade together, with a couple brief breakups in between, Kourtney and Scott split for good mid-2015, captured during the same episode of Keeping Up in which Kim was still considering whether or not to put Scott in her video game. She chose not to, for obvious reasons. Now, unlike Scott, Caitlyn seemed pretty down to be included in the app with really no discernible issues.
Well, I am in San Francisco and I am gonna meet...
Your book or what?
No, the video game.
Oh, the video.
Do you want a character in my game?
You know what? I was glad.
Kate had already been separated from Kim's mother Kris for about 2 years at this point. Shortly after finalizing their divorce, Kate came out publicly as a trans woman, which the show acknowledged for the first time mid-season 10. The family's reactions to her new identity would be captured in an ongoing storyline that was both refreshingly raw and deeply uncomfortable, as each member adjusted to the change with varying degrees of success. Kim, and to his credit, Scott, handled the situation better than most of the family. Kim can be seen on the show helping Kate with her wardrobe as well as trying to console her mother's feelings of grief. But later in the episode, in which Kim first asks Kate to be a part of her mobile game, Vanity Fair released their interview with Caitlyn for their July 2015 cover story. The Kardashian sisters didn't like the way the article portrayed their mom, and even though the family eventually moved past the Vanity Fair debacle, the release of Caitlyn's memoir soon after inflamed the issues further, not only for Kate's statements about Kris, but also the things she said about the girl's late father, Robert. Caitlyn's relationship with the Kardashians continues to be strained to this day, as she revealed in late 2023 that she barely has any contact with anyone in the family except her 2 biological children, Kendall and Kylie. How the family became so fractured is somewhat complex and nuanced, with neither side being completely in the right. But the details of that don't matter right now. The main point is, It's sad. No matter what you think about the Kardashians or Caitlyn Jenner as public figures, seeing people that once genuinely cared about one another become so estranged over relatively minor differences in perspectives just sucks. But one of the interesting consequences of the Kardashian business model always blending the professional with the personal is that the family's professional ventures often become at least distantly haunted by some deeply personal trauma. It's not like if you play Kim Kardashian Hollywood today, if you could play it today, you'd ever actually think about the fact that Scott and Caitlyn are missing from the game, but for people who were watching Keeping Up in 2015 while also using Kim's then new mobile app, the absence of those two avatars couldn't be written off as an accidental oversight. Kardashian viewers would know that Scott and Caitlyn were at one point intended to be featured on the game, and they would know why they never made it in. That's not something Kim could ever avoid, given how much the game otherwise benefits from users having deep knowledge of Kardashian lore. There's a storyline in the game that integrates promo for Khloe Kardashian's unisex fragrance Unbreakable, though the app calls it Unstoppable. But there's another in-game Khloe plotline that revolves around her love of Cortadito coffee, spelled with a K in the app, of course. Khloe, to my knowledge, has no business investments in Cortadito, but there was a 2013 episode of Kourtney and Kim Take Miami in which a visiting Khloe becomes absolutely obsessed with the beverage.
I'm still trying to understand how the hell you ended up on a bus in the middle of Crackers.
No, what happened was I really needed just my Cuban coffee.
What is up with you and this coffee addiction?
They're just invigorating.
Invigorating? Brush your teeth.
It just gives.
For the record, unlike the Kourtney-Kim fight over the app, I actually do think the Cortadito plotline was completely manufactured and possibly used as a cover for behavior that might indicate Khloe's reliance on another substance known to make people hyperactive that's also very popular in Miami, but that's neither here nor there. Point is, the Cortadito reference in Kim Kardashian Hollywood can only be understood by someone who happens to remember that one 2013 episode from a Keeping Up with the Kardashians spin-off. The Kardashian empire is constantly rewarding its audience for intaking as much Kardashian content as possible, and that's partially what makes the family so successful. Not just as celebrities, but as a particular kind of celebrity that can really only thrive in an internet era that enables constant engagement. Outside of Kim Kardashian Hollywood, in the mid-2010s, apps fronted by or associated with other big-name public figures were becoming increasingly common. iPhone and Android devices didn't debut until the late 2000s, meaning it took until the early 2010s for smartphones to become a standard item owned by the average American. And of course, once basically everyone had a smartphone, the app market became flooded with all sorts of bullshit, trying to cash in on this promising new field of technology.
You have an app that allows you to dress up any picture to snoopify. So for example, we have some pictures here, like here's John Boehner who's been snoopified. And then Brian Williams, who used the app on him.
There were a few different kinds of apps released by celebrities at the time. Some acted as companion programs to other existing projects, like Bjork's Biophilia or Lady Gaga's Art Pop, both of which promoted each respective singer's albums of the same names, while other stars released apps based around a more specific gimmick. Some of them made sense with the celebrity's brand. Jillian Michaels and Chris Hemsworth both had fitness apps, for instance, which is appropriate since they're both famously fit people. Others seemed completely random, like Shakira's Love Rock mobile game, which was basically just Candy Crush with jewels, or Tom Hanks' Hanks Writer, which was just a digital typewriter that I guess you could use as your device's keyboard. What a lot of celebs wound up using apps for, though, was as hosts for their own blogs and/or social networking platforms. In 2012, Lady Gaga's social networking site littlemonsters.com went public, with the Little Monsters app following shortly after. Taylor Swift never had a stardom-inspired game like Kim, Britney, Katy, or Nicki, but she did work with Glu Mobile to release her own social networking program, The Swift Life, in 2017. The era's most infamous example of this phenomenon, though, came from actor Jeremy Renner with an app aptly titled Jeremy Renner Official. That way you wouldn't confuse it with all the unofficial Jeremy Renner fan apps just flooding the market. And the app had limited features.
Stars are sort of like likes, and you can give a bunch of likes to a picture.
Yeah, that's the difference between stars and likes, is on most platforms you get 1 like and that's it, so don't fuck it up. But on here, you can send 1 star or you can send 1,000 stars. The only thing stopping you from sending more stars is money. You have to pay money to send more stars.
So this app is basically like Instagram, but the only person who's allowed to post is Jeremy Renner. And the only thing you're allowed to do is give him money.
As much as people clowned on Jeremy for this, he wasn't doing anything that weird relative to what other celebrities were also doing in the app space during this era. The weirdest thing about it was just that it was Jeremy Renner who at no point was famous enough to reasonably believe this was something anybody wanted from him. It took the app about 6 months to descend into chaos after being overrun by trolls, but that's actually a lot better than the Swift Life, which was invaded by homophobic and white supremacist commenters within like a week of launching. The fact is, if it were so easy to create a whole new social networking platform that any celebrity with connections to a tech development firm could do it, we would have found a good alternative for Twitter by now, but it's not that easy. By the end of the 2010s, the celebrity app bubble burst, with Caitlin Tiffany writing for Fox at the time. The age in which we believed in the impossible was short and bright and stupid, and it is now over. The Kardashians, too, had their own failed blogging apps, launched in 2015, then shut down after about 3.5 years. But a failed blogging app aside, Kim specifically is usually really smart when it comes to tech startups and online brand building, making her ventures into app development far more successful than other public figures of her time. A lot of people mistakenly believe Kim got her start in the industry working as Paris Hilton's assistant when she was actually her closet organizer. She ran a business in which she would go through the wardrobe of her rich and famous friends, then sell all their old designer garments on eBay for anywhere between a couple $100 to a couple $1,000. Operating an eBay account doesn't take that much tech savvy, sure, but Kim's closet organizing origins prove that even in the early 2000s, she was finding ways to combine celebrity, fashion, and the internet for her own financial gain. And that's pretty much her modus operandi to this day. While her brand has found itself way deeper in the online space than eBay. In 2009, for instance, Kim co-founded the online retail company ShoeDazzle, which became a pioneer in the field of subscription-based fashion services before being sold to Just Fab in 2013. And about a year after Kim Kardashian Hollywood premiered, Kim also released another app called Kimoji. It cost $1.99 to download and gave users access to over 250 Kim-themed emojis that could be added to their smartphone's keyboard collection. It was a silly concept, but it was also an immediate smash hit, earning $1 million per minute upon launch, inspiring its own line of Kimoji merchandise, including Kimoji fragrances, and spawning a cottage industry of similar public figure-fronted emoji apps from the likes of Justin Bieber, Amber Rose, Hillary Clinton, and more. Like with the celebrity stardom apps, Kim was the first on the scene, and her version was by far the most successful. Likely because Kim understands social media more than other stars at her level. Jen Allen Garcia, who worked on the Kimoji app, told Quartz in 2016 that Kim mostly came up with the ideas for the emojis herself, many of which Kim believed would fill a void in what users were looking for in normal day-to-day conversations. She wanted to create images that people were talking about via text, Garcia said. Sometimes it's about sex, sometimes it's about partying. We're missing a condom, we're missing birth control. The most popular Kimojis, though, were the ones that embraced the memes of Kim's public life. The number one most used was taken from an infamous screenshot of Kim sobbing over the dissolution of her second marriage, because again, Kardashian businesses are often haunted by deeply personal trauma.
At 30 years old, I thought I'd be married with kids, and I'm not. And I failed at this, and you think that I don't feel bad? People change their mind. People make mistakes.
Kim knew what aspects of her public persona to embrace because Kim has always been a pioneer for social media personalities. She's so much more online than other celebrities, exemplified by the fact that she was one of the first public figures to embrace Twitter and Instagram as a means of connecting with her audience. And though most celebrities are on all the big social media platforms now, Kim is still unique amongst them as one of the few A-listers without a social media manager. When you scroll Kim's Instagram page, you're looking at a Kim-curated feed, and that's pretty remarkable for someone of her status.
Now, you do these yourself. You said this.
Yes.
Absolutely. You don't have a team of people. I didn't see any chasing you around.
Yeah, no, I don't have a team. If the whole connection is me with other people, I don't want someone else. It makes no sense to have that connection.
Did you think about that? You were puzzled when I said there were people that had that. You don't have anybody doing any of your social media.
No, that doesn't make sense.
So how much?
No matter how manipulative and carefully calculated the Kardashians' branding becomes, there's still something enticing and authentic feeling about the lack of distance Kim and her family members have from their audience. By watching Kim's shows, playing her games, or checking her social media output, you're being invited into her real life where the lines between the personal and the professional don't really exist. In some other videos, I've mentioned my frustrations with Lady Gaga's social media output over the last few years. After spending the first decade of her career grooming fans into developing intense parasocial relationships with her and her work, somewhere along the way, Gaga's relationship to her audience changed, and she switched from using her social media accounts to connect with fans to mostly posting social media manager approved advertisements for her endorsement deals and her own makeup brand House Labs. So some of the ways that Gaga uses her platform feel a little icky to me, but far, far worse than that, it's also just so boring. Every time I see that Lady Gaga has posted a new Instagram story, I open it knowing it's just gonna be some House Labs bullshit. And the problem isn't even the fact that it's all promo, but that the ads themselves are just uninteresting. They're so sterile, so repetitive, so hollow. And there's such a stark contrast visually between the few things Gaga still posts as a pop star and the many things she posts as the face of a cosmetics brand. Compare that to the grid on Kim Kardashian's Instagram. It all fits within a fairly uniform aesthetic despite the types of content she uploads being incredibly varied. She posts selfies, casual vacation pics, promo for brands she owns, cute pics of her and her kids, select shots from professional photo shoots, ads for other companies' products, and old home videos and photos all right next to each other, with some sponsored posts barely distinguishable from the more intimate looks into her life. It absolutely exploits fans' personal connection to her, but at least it's fun to look at. Kim is able to maintain continuity between her public personal life and her public professional life because the entire conceit for her brand is that it's all the same stuff. A parasocially fueled blend of consumerism and candid exposure that's all equally as Kim K. Following the success of Kim Kardashian Hollywood, the executives at Glu Mobile thought they could easily replicate Kim's accomplishments with other female celebrities. Katy Perry Pop, they thought, would be able to reach similar heights since Katy, at the time, had a larger social media following than Kim. But Kim's following, while technically smaller, was far more engaged with her online content, and she was more engaged with them too.
I would ask people, what color fragrance bottle should I use? This shade of pink or this shade of pink? And I would twit pick a photo and I would get a response back, and it was fascinating to me, and I would use that real information and use it in my everyday life. I mean, I just loved communicating with people, and I still use it all the time, and I love to ask questions and see the instant responses, and I could be jet lagged across the world and write something on Twitter and feel like there were people that I can communicate with.
Speaking about the app, Kim told Adweek in 2015, something that really worked in the game that was kind of an accident are the updates. For example, your character can go on vacation to Mexico, and that's one of the places that I go all the time. I actually didn't know the date of the update's launch, but I happened to be going to Mexico on the same day. Once I started posting pictures through Instagram that I was in Mexico, everyone was playing along and saying, I just updated my game and I'm in Mexico with you. They would literally get a bikini like the one I had Instagrammed in a photo. We realized that it worked so well because we were in such good communication, myself and the Glu team, to make updates in real time. I try to tell them as far in advance of when I know I have a trip planned, and we try to get as many lifelike things that I'm actually doing to really happen in the game so you can play along with my real life. For all the other celebrity-fronted stardom apps, the physical voice of each celebrity is at least minimally present. Britney, Katy, Kendall, and Kylie must have all recorded some vocals for the intros for their games, and they all at some point recorded an additional video to promote their app, though Britney's was just like an intro for the game that is only a few seconds long, and she clearly recorded while in the middle of rehearsal for her Vegas show.
You look great. Let's get out there. It's showtime.
Whatever. At some point, they all showed up somewhere to do something for their app, and they all at least claimed to be intimately involved in their game's design.
I was very hands-on with it, so it's not something that they're getting that's just, something I don't care about. It's something that I really took time to go over with the creators.
A few moments later.
The item costs 10 crowns. Buy item. I put fucking highlights in my wig. Goodbye.
But I don't think it's insignificant that Kim was the only one of the lot to ever actually post a photo of herself in a recording booth, which she did days before the app was even officially announced. Prompting The Mirror, by the way, to publish an article claiming Kim was launching a pop career. And because Kim tagged the post #KimKardashianGame, they very sincerely wrote, "It looks like she just dropped a heavy hint the new album will be called Kim Kardashian Game too, which promises all sorts." I just thought that was funny, and maybe also representative of how women in tech are seen. Kim basically said, "Hi, I'm coming out with a video game," and a tabloid with what I assure you is not a satirical piece, they're being 100% serious, reported on that news being like, "That must be the name of her new album. I bet her husband is helping her make it." Doesn't matter. The point is, from the start of its campaign, the labor Kim was putting into this new venture was always front and center in the advertising strategy. Obviously, she wasn't doing the coding or any of the more technical work, But far more than the other celebrity-fronted stardom apps, Kim Kardashian Hollywood wasn't just something where a world-famous star just slapped her name onto a game that she had nothing to do with. She seemed pretty actively involved in the creative process. She showed meetings with the Glu Mobile team on her show. She appeared in interviews beside Glu Mobile CEO Niccolo De Masi. And from all reports from everyone around at the time, she was deeply involved in overseeing the app's design, reportedly emailing the Glu Mobile team daily and meeting with them in person every other month.
I will admit that this did kind of fall into my lap. I wasn't really sure. My husband was the one that encouraged me, oh, that's so cool, you have to have a video game, this is so cool. And so once I got into it and once I realized what the character was gonna look like, it didn't really look like me. I sent it to a friend that's a graphic artist that works on other video games, and he redrew it for me and sent me all the notes of what exactly it should look like. And once I started to get into the creative process, I feel like I was hooked. I mean, I'll call them literally in the middle of the night and say, the strap of the shoe is wrong on this character. You have to change her shoes. Like, I would never wear those shoes. Here's my cell phone, here's my email. I'm gonna send you pictures all night long. So, you know, this is what I want, this hairstyle and this and the game. Now I've had a baby, so you should be able to have a baby in the game. Like, I think we really did create a reality video game. And that, I think, what is so connecting, because I'll be in Mexico, and in the game you can go to Mexico the same day.
That's one of the things the others have not done, is you've been very careful to synchronize what you're actually doing with what's happening in the game.
It makes sense then that Kim's game outperformed the other celebrity stardom apps. None of the others for whom Glu Mobile developed stardom games were as actively involved in either their game's creation or its promotion. When Nicki Minaj posted to her Instagram teasing the release of The Empire in November of 2016, the video she uploaded seemed to indicate that Nicki was seeing the game for the first time as she introduced it to her fans.
What makes her move sometimes?
Just so you know she's alive, that she's not a statue.
And soon after the releases, Katie, Nicki, Brittany, and Kendall and Kylie barely acknowledged the existence of their games, while Kim continued to post about Kim Kardashian Hollywood on social media semi-frequently up until just last year. Of course, she had better motive than any of those other women. Her game was making a fortune. Just 3 weeks after its launch, Bloomberg was estimating Kim Kardashian Hollywood was set to make about $200 million by the end of its first year. It didn't make quite that much, actually not even half, but it was a record-breaking success, becoming the most profitable app in Glu Mobile's history at the time, an accomplishment the game hung on to for years after its premiere, and accounting for 52% of the entire company's profits in its first quarter. Response from critics wasn't bad either. The game received praise for its animation and sound design, with Brendan Keogh writing for Overland in 2014. Each environment, presented from a simple side-on perspective, is bursting with life and depth. Every room of every building is vibrant and near bursting with life. The interface, too, feels near bursting, yet never cluttered. The amount of information squeezed onto the edges of the screen and the ease with which it can be navigated demonstrates a maturity in smartphone game design. Many critics also complimented the game's progressive views on sexuality, as Kim's character asks the user early on if they prefer men or women, while the app never actually restricts the player's romantic prospects to any gender. Most of the praise the game received, though, came from its writing. For Kotaku, Patricia Hernandez celebrated plot lines involving the game's primary villain, Willow Pape, with an article entitled, "Kim Kardashian Hollywood has the best rival since Pokemon's Gary Oak." Now, if you play the game with a male main character, your rival is gonna be a dude named Dirk Diamonds. But for the sake of this video, I'm just gonna refer to the rival as Willow. As the player, the first time you meet Willow, she'll accuse you of flirting with her boyfriend, then start a rumor about you on Twitter, leading your character to hire a publicist who convinces you to go on a date with someone else and prove you're not a homewrecker. As Hernandez points out, a lot of people at the time believed Willow was a stand-in for Kim's ex-best friend, Paris Hilton. Personally, I don't see the connection, other than the fact that Willow and Paris are both blonde. Others have speculated, however, that Willow isn't a representation of any of Kim's external foes. There was once a photo of Paris wearing clothes kind of similar to Willow's, but there's another photo of Kim seeming to wear Willow's exact outfit, leading to the theory that Willow is actually just a representation of Kim's inner demons. Silly as that sounds, the explanation does make some sense. Kim is a character in the game, but her real-life rise to fame mirrors that of the user's virtual rise to in-game celebrity. The player is more or less following the trajectory of Kim's career, and at some point in the game, the player will earn Willow's exact outfit themselves, allowing them to physically transform into their own enemy at will. In addition to that, there are scenarios the game puts the user into in which stooping to Willow's villainous level provides the user an advantage. Sam Rollo wrote for Bustle in August of 2014, "Willow tries to destroy your career. She causes scenes, picks fights, bashes you on Twitter, badmouths you to the press, all things that the Kim we all know and love would never do to a fan." But maybe part of Kim wishes she could do that. Not to a fan necessarily, but to someone rising through the ranks of Hollywood ready to steal the spotlight, the way that you do in Kim Kardashian Hollywood. Kim created Willow not just to knock you down and make sure that you never surpass her own level of fame, but to show you what Hollywood can do to you. Maybe that's what happens when you finally win the game. You don't get a reality show or Lux wedding. You start stalking C-listers at clubs, trying to provoke them into a career-derailing fight. Someday we will all be Willow Pape, and that's when the world of Kim Kardashian Hollywood will end. As another Bustle article, published just a few days before Rollo's piece would point out though, behaving with the same depravity of Willow will not always work to the user's benefit. Writer Christy Roeder scoured Kim Kardashian Hollywood message boards to gather data on how the user's individual interactions with Willow affects their character's celebrity standing. Roeder advises you to play nice if the two of you end up at an event in which Elizabeth Korkov, the game's stand-in for Anna Wintour, is present, because Elizabeth doesn't want to see you being messy. Keeping a cool head around her will strengthen your business relationship. From the data collected in the piece, it seems you also don't want to get messy in front of paparazzi or the game's generic news anchor Ray Powers either. Most of the time, it's better for you to be the bigger person, or at least appear to be the bigger person. Because when your publicist asks you if you want to plant a nasty rumor about Willow in the press, deciding to take revenge will gain you more fans than taking the high road will. The game encourages users to actually think about good PR. Being publicly nasty, talking shit about Willow to paparazzi or in front of potential business partners will hurt your image and damage your reputation in the industry. But sabotaging an enemy behind the scenes will almost always benefit you. And since so much of the game is connected to Kim Kardashian's brand, interacting with the text of the game forces you to think about what all of this might be saying about how Kim got to where she is. Writing for The Verge in 2016, Kwame Opam discussed the then-recent update to the app, which allowed players to celebrate the third birthday of Kim's daughter North, calling the move strangely groundbreaking and writing, "With the help of the game's creative team, Kim paints a cartoonified picture of what it's like to be in her inner circle. In effect, she's turned a video game into a kind of personal blog. The attention to the particulars is crucial, because Kim Kardashian Hollywood isn't just about being famous, it's about living like a Kardashian in the moment." Putting something as personal as your daughter's first birthday party into your own game sounds dangerously self-aggrandizing, but the app has a sense of humor about itself that satires the Kardashian brand as much as it promotes it. Every person you meet, even random bartenders and retail clerks, is shown with a label next to their name, ranking them on a celebrity hierarchy of A-list to E-list. Hanging out with A-listers as much as possible will earn you more fans and make you more famous. And knowing the celebrity status of every person you interact with pushes you to think of those who are less famous to be less valuable. But even E-listers aren't completely useless. If you tip a bartender in a restaurant or club, they could give you gossip that might help you network one of the higher status people in the room. Every interaction here is transactional, and there is only one goal: get famous. And once you've done that, get more famous. In a lot of ways, the game seems simple and easy to navigate. Your character can do photo shoots, film reality shows, exploit their romantic relationships for attention, etc., but in real life, you're just tapping some blue circles on a screen using a limited amount of in-game energy, making the basic gameplay pretty easy. It doesn't take any real skill, much like many people will say the Kardashians became famous while having no real talent. But also, like the Kardashians' real-life rise to A-list status, it absolutely benefits you to pay attention to the story and be strategic about how you play this game. And if you're playing to the absolute peak of your ability, making all the right moves possible, your character will at times make some morally dubious decisions. It is excellent satire. Writing for Time in July of 2014, Charlotte Alter called Kim Kardashian Hollywood genius while comparing it to Dante's Inferno, stating, "There's no way to get through the game without committing one of the 7 deadly sins at almost every possible junction. You go out of your way to humiliate your enemy Willow Pape, wrath. You're always trying to be as famous as Kim, envy. And you've got an eye on your next big publicity stunt, pride. After the first level, you never go back to work at the clothing store so chic, sloth, and dollar bills appear every time you check your makeup, greed. We all know what your manager means when he tells you to keep your head up, or down, or wherever the photographers want it, lust. The only sin you don't commit on this long journey from D-list tag-along to A-list star is gluttony, because this is Los Angeles after all. The fact that the characters are kind of shitty people doesn't seem like a mistake on the app's part, nor does it ever feel like the sins surrounding Hollywood life are being co-signed by the app as good." Writing for Overland, Brendan Keogh states, "Jokes are constantly being made at the expense of the celebrity culture the game depicts, showing an awareness of the game's own superficial content. A personal fave was when, after an incident with a low-level celebrity in a bar, he tried to begin rumors about a conspiracy between myself and Kardashian on the game's in-game Twitter feed, hashtagging his tweet, #Illuminati, #Obamacare. It's funny, cool, flippant, and far more topical than any blockbuster video game could hope to be." Not everyone got the joke or the game's appeal, though. And while positive reviews for the app tended to be even-handed and informed, the negative responses Kim Kardashian Hollywood provoked were often supremely overdramatic and typically provided by people that clearly didn't actually play the game. In discussing the backlash the app was receiving, especially from the gaming community, Samantha Allen wrote for the Daily Dot in 2014, "Now that Kim Kardashian Hollywood is on track to earn a whopping $200 million by the end of this year, the crowd of male game-playing naysayers is becoming even more vocal. Vociferous commenters on the gaming website IGN are declaring Kardashian's success a sign of the apocalypse and a symbol for the moral bankruptcy of Western society. She probably can't even play her own game," one commenter declares, while several more lament their lost faith in humanity as a result of the game's popularity. Before the app even came out, Luke Plunkett wrote an article for Kotaku entitled, "Kim Kardashian's video game is the stuff of nightmares." The fun thing about that piece is that Plunkett doesn't actually say anything about the app that's necessarily bad, he just gives basic information about the gameplay from a walkthrough video he saw on Facebook and presents it as if it's inherently stupid. I'm gonna read one of the things he wrote verbatim, so just forgive the typo that I guess no one at Kotaku caught in this 137-word article? He says, so yeah, you can dress up, go on dates, and do ... stuff, with the opportunity to spend money at every turn. I am not kidding when I say that besides one snide comment implying that Kim Kardashian is famous for doing nothing, this is the full extent of Plunkett's commentary on this game. This is the supporting evidence that is supposed to justify the title of this article, blatantly stating that the content of this video game is scary. Lukey Bear, if you ever watch this, please explain to me what about dressing up, going on dates, and doing stuff is so nightmarish to you. Better yet, explain it to a therapist. Let's focus on this last bit, though. The game gives you the opportunity to spend money. Even the wording takes the bite out of what I assume to be a criticism. Like, oh no, I'm gonna have an opportunity. But okay, there's some reasonable criticism to have of the game here. Like most, if not all, of Glu Mobile's gaming apps, Kim Kardashian Hollywood follows a freemium business model, meaning the game is free to download and free to play, but players are constantly incentivized to use their real-life money to buy into in-game currency and make their journey to virtual A-list celebrity status a quicker feat. There's a website called Dark Pattern Games that identifies all the dark patterns many popular apps follow. A dark pattern is defined on the site as something that is deliberately added to a game to cause an unwanted negative experience for the player with a positive outcome for the game developer. That outcome is usually that the player will give the developer their money. And Kim Kardashian Hollywood follows a lot of those patterns. It is a very emotionally manipulative game that has led to many normal, everyday people spending loads of money on it. When I first downloaded the app in 2014, I was hellbent on not giving it a dime of my money, which I stayed true to, by the way, until 2019 with the introduction of the Show Your Style event. I went into my purchase history on the App Store, and I'm being very vulnerable in telling you this, but from 2019 until the end of 2023, I spent in total about $243 on Kim Kardashian Hollywood. It's a little embarrassing, but over a 4-year period, that's only about like $5 a month. And it's pretty good compared to some other people. Like a week after the game came out, Tracy Egan Morrissey wrote for Jezebel that she'd already spent almost $500 on the app. It's more extreme than anything I've done while playing the game, but I understand how Morrissey got there. Like many mobile games, Kim Kardashian Hollywood is designed to be addictive. One of the big motivators for users to spend their money is the fact that almost every task they take on in the game requires them to use their in-game energy. That energy is given out via a frustratingly slow timer that caps out at a specific amount depending on the player's level. You will run out of energy quickly, and the fastest way to replenish it is to use in-game currency to purchase more. And while you can accrue your virtual wealth in that in-game currency without spending real-life money, like the energy itself, you likely won't accrue it fast enough to satisfy your of-the-moment desire to play. The easiest solution is just to make a couple in-app purchases here and there, which will hopefully hold you over for a few more hours or maybe just a few more minutes of playtime. It is a manipulative system, and it does deserve criticism for being a greedy way to exploit everyday people's quest for a quick dopamine fix. But it's not a unique business model in the online gaming sphere, and the game never requires you to purchase anything. Like, it just simply does not. But if you're only listening to people that never actually played it, you might get a different impression.
So in the game, you have an avatar. The avatar represents you, and the whole point is to become an A-list celebrity.
Of
the
course.
only way you can become an A-list celebrity is if you purchase certain accessories and certain products through the app to become popular.
That's just Not true. Will you reach A-list status faster if you give the game your real-life money? Yeah, but it's not at all necessary to succeed at the game. Glu Mobile's CEO himself said that 95 to 99% of the players don't ever spend any money on the app, which is typical for all of their freemium games, and I do believe him. I reached A-list status within the first year that the game dropped, and again, I didn't give it any of my money until 2019. And even then, I was mostly spending money to get extra tickets in the Show Your Style event, which is kind of separate from the rest of the game. It's just like an extra thing where you dress your character up and then you submit it to compete against other characters based on like a theme. It's just like fun. Have you heard of it? Anna from the Young Turks also goes on a rant implying that the reason people like this game is because no one wants to live in the real world anymore.
I mean, we live in a world today where people would much rather buy virtual Gucci shoes than real Gucci shoes.
It's giving like generational pick-me vibes. Like, girl, you are way too young to be doing such an old man yells at clouds bit. And it's also ironic because the implication is that the people playing this game are doing it at the expense of their real life relationships.
Make real friends, real relationships, real friendships. That's awesome. People that you can actually have sex with.
It's already reductive and frankly cruel to imply that someone's solo media consumption, whether it be playing a game or even just watching a movie by themselves, is a sad replacement for a social life. But in the case of Kim Kardashian Hollywood, you are actively encouraged to add your real-life friends into your character's contact list. Your friends' avatars can co-star your events. You can send each other gifts. You can take them on a date. For a lot of people, the community-driven features were a core reason for why they played. And I wouldn't care so much about the Young Turks not knowing anything about the game itself, except for A, they're making a video about it, and B, they're using their misunderstanding of the game's mechanics to literally just insult the game's entire user base and imply that they're stupid.
You have to understand something so that we have clarity tonight, okay? You don't actually get anything. You don't actually get the clothes or the hairstyles. You don't actually become A-list. You don't actually get into a club. You don't actually get to rub anything on anything else, okay?
It's unfortunate, yeah.
Your avatar gets it in the freaking app. And everybody's like, oh man, I gotta get that, man. I gotta do an energy boost for my energy. I don't even know what that is. You get a virtual Red Bull or something, okay? And then they're like, proud, I made it on the A-list. You know how you make it on the A-list? By spending more money on the app. There's nothing to be proud of.
And why would they do that? Why would they make a video speculating on and judging the appeal of a game that they've clearly never actually played? Well, this is how they open the video.
One of the more frustrating aspects about Kim Kardashian is that she makes a ton of money off of doing pretty much nothing. But if that upsets you, this next story is definitely going to irritate you. There's a Kim Kardashian themed app. And this app, even though you can download it for free, rakes in $700,000 a day.
And then toward the end.
And so look, I don't begrudge anyone who likes this app or who likes to play this app, but anyone who does play it and anyone who does spend money on these accessories to become an A-lister, just keep into consideration that Kim Kardashian is literally sitting on her ass and cashing in from you wanting to live this virtual life.
So ironically, it's making her more rich, more famous, more of an A-lister.
Yeah.
And it's not doing anything for you, although it is a lovely ass she's sitting on.
Their real message is that you should be upset that Kim Kardashian is succeeding at something. Moreover, you should be morally opposed to helping her succeed, even if your own personal contribution is relatively minor and it's within a process that you're also getting some enjoyment out of. Like, don't pay money toward this game that you're having fun playing. Kim Kardashian might get a percentage of that. Around the same time, author Ayelet Waldman went on a Twitter and Facebook tirade, accusing the Kim Kardashian app of bypassing some in-app purchase control she had on her 11-year-old son's iPhone account when he spent $120 on the game in 2 days. Turns out there was just another credit card linked to the account, so it was in fact her own mistake, but Waldman still laid blame on the vile scumbag Kardashian pigs. She mentions multiple times in the rant that her son Abe had broken down in tears over the incident, causing him to curse the Kardashians for the evil ways they tricked him into in-app purchases. Personally, I don't think a child of that age is that concerned with his family's finances of his own accord. If he was crying, it's probably because Ayelet Waldman and her husband, whom she has gone on record to say she loves more than any of her kids, by the way, were most likely yelling at him for the purchase. Why else would an 11-year-old care unless it got him in trouble? But admitting to that part would mean that Waldman might have to take some responsibility for her own actions. And why do that when you can just blame a Kardashian? Her entire diatribe was ridiculous. Neither Kim Kardashian nor anyone at Glu Mobile was responsible for what Ayelet Waldman's unmonitored 11-year-old spent her money on a device that she owns. Especially because the game was never marketed toward kids. It was marketed toward Kim Kardashian's audience, which is dominantly made up of millennial women, aka adults. Yes, the game has predatory practices in aim of its own financial game, but so do most other games in the mobile sphere, or even just most other games, period. They're made by people that are trying to make money. According to reviews from the Dark Patterns website, Kim Kardashian Hollywood has about the same negative score as Pokemon Go, an app that is marketed toward children. Nothing Kim was doing here was unique, but she was receiving a unique amount of backlash for it.
Kim Kardashian Hollywood is one of the country's hottest mobile games. In this virtual world, players try to replicate the celebrity's unusual rise to A-list status, but that fame can come with a price. 11-year-old Isabella Norris downloaded the game for free, then her mom says she got a bill totaling about $40.
I was shocked. All of a sudden I see charges from iTunes for Kim Kardashian.
She has since learned players can make in-app purchases, spending real-life money to buy virtual goods, but Isabella says that wasn't clear.
During the game, I have no indication that I am being charged for anything.
I hate to call out a child, but that bitch is lying. She's definitely an adult by now. It's fine. So clearly, Ayelet Waldman wasn't the only person upset about the app's very basic features, but her rant was still illustrative of why this became a story. So let's look at some of her tweets. Whoever designed the Kardashian Hollywood game is an evil scumbag to end all scumbags. Why am I not surprised? Preying on children. Again, not really marketed toward kids. Just because your kid downloaded it doesn't mean that that's the target audience. But whatever, let's focus on this line here. Why am I not surprised? It implies that Waldman already had some preconceived notions about the people who made this app, and she never names Glu Mobile. The people who literally made the app is immaterial to her. The only entity she explicitly identifies is the Kardashians. She writes in another tweet, "Parents, if your kids have smartphones, go check in-app purchases, and I advise delete the Kardashian game, unless you want to give her money." First, it's absurd to advise parents to delete Kim's app with no acknowledgement of the fact that pretty much any app you download off the App Store has in-app purchases. It's industry standard. But again, notice, Waldman doesn't say, delete the Kardashian game unless you want to give Glu Mobile money. She says, unless you want to give her money. Her being Kim Kardashian. Then she says, Parents, delete the Kardashian Hollywood game. She's making $700,000 a day on this game by tricking into mass purchases. To be clear, the game was making $700,000 a day. That's not the amount that Kim was personally pocketing. But who cares? Notice that the attention has moved away from the money the parents might lose. Instead, the focus is on what money Kim Kardashian might gain. For Waldman, this isn't really about protecting her kids from predatory apps. It's about protecting her own money from going toward one woman she doesn't like. Even when she's celebrating the silver lining of this event, she's expressing explicit hatred toward Kim, writing, "Best thing about this disaster? My son fucking hates the Kardashians now." But there's one tweet I find more telling than even that, where Waldman states, "We'd set up what we thought were restricted allowances, but because there was a card attached, again, your fault, I'm now funding Kim Kardashian's lip gloss." The most charitable interpretation of that sentence is that Waldman is upset that because her son spent money on an app, she was inadvertently funding another one of Kim Kardashian's business ventures. It's already a silly thing to say because I don't think that at that point in Kim Kardashian's career, she was relying on app money to get another business off the ground. But even that explanation falls apart when you realize Kim Kardashian didn't have a makeup line in 2014. She wouldn't have one for a couple years. So Waldman isn't talking about Kim Kardashian's lip gloss as in a line of lip gloss that Kim Kardashian sold. She literally means individual tubes of lip gloss that Kim Kardashian personally bought, owned, and used. If the entire point here is that you don't want Kim Kardashian to have any more money, which, first of all, why do you care that much? There are so many other rich people doing so much worse stuff than Kim Kardashian. But also, why make that point with lip gloss? Why not say, I'm funding Kim Kardashian's cars, or Kim Kardashian's homes, or just her overall lavish lifestyle? Lip gloss is such a weirdly specific thing to bring up that I can't not see it as a pretty gendered attack. Like, ew, Kim Kardashian and her stupid lip gloss that only a dumb bimbo like her would spend money on. She doesn't spend her money on important things like you, Ayelet, such as drugs. Let's also note that in the midst of her own rant against Kim, Waldman retweeted someone responding to her who wrote, "She has a game? Do you advance to new levels via sex tapes and brief marriages? What the hell?" While putting this video together, I've been watching a lot of clips of people talking about this game from the time that it came out, and would you be surprised to find out that the sex tape comes up a lot?
Before you were famous, you were new to Hollywood. Aww. This is where we have sex with Ray J. Right?
Before you were famous, you were new to Hollywood.
I feel like if this was true to life, there would be a sex tape portion and a casting couch.
Kim Kardashian, I want to just let you know that you're set to come by the shoot. I have an extra little surprise for you. We're gonna make a porno.
There he is, there's Ray J. Time to f me, Zoe could get you famous.
The best way to become critically acclaimed and achieve worldwide fame is to release an unadulterated sex tape.
That's how you get famous, right? Be born into a rich family, have a crappy TV show, make a porno, and reap the rewards.
Your goal is to become famous, kind of like what she did.
Oh, like she did, so you know what she did.
Right. But that's not, that part of it is not in the app.
Oh, it's not?
So what I'm thinking is they might need to add a Ray J app inside of that app.
Right.
That's where it started.
Right.
It could be an in-app purchase.
Of say being born in Southern California to a lawyer for a father and a rich socialite for a mother, and then befriending, say, Paris Hilton and hanging around with celebrities and celebrities' brothers and making a sex tape with that. It'd be the best simulation of Kim Kardashian's life we've ever known.
Okay, so this is fun and all, but like at what point do I get to make a sex tape? Because
I feel like I was promised something with the name Kim Kardashian.
I played it for like a good 3 hours. Did you get to the sex tape yet?
No. Is that the first level or the last level?
Sex tape. Don't think the sex tape is present.
Oh, we're just pretending she just became famous through her merits and laurels.
Oh yeah.
As someone who pays more attention to the Kardashian clan's exploits than most, I always expect this kind of talking point whenever anyone is discussing the family. The tape gets used to undermine Kim's personal achievements all the time. Every time she succeeds at something, people will point back to the tape like it's the one thing that has made her as successful as she currently is, ignoring that, one, Keeping Up with the Kardashians was greenlit at the network before anybody knew there was a tape. So even with how the tape's release affected the trajectory of the show, Kim and her family members would have been reality stars regardless. In fact, both Kourtney and Kim could be seen on other reality shows years before their family became subject of their own. 2, not everyone that has a sex tape reaches the level of fame that Kim Kardashian has. In fact, no one that has a sex tape has reached the level of fame that Kim Kardashian has, except for her. Seems like there might be some other factors involved. And then 3, Kim has spent her entire life surrounded by fame. Her first boyfriend was the nephew of Michael Jackson. She had her 14th birthday party at Neverland Ranch. Her father was once engaged to Priscilla Presley. Her mother's second husband is one of the most famous former athletes of all time. And her father, of course, was best friends with O.J. Simpson and defended him during one of the world's most infamous murder trials. If there's one thing we can attribute all of Kim Kardashian's success to, it's the fact that she grew up with industry connections that she used to grow her brand. Networking is the key to Kim Kardashian's success, and it's a key that Kim Kardashian Hollywood does acknowledge throughout its gameplay. You climb the ranks of Hollywood largely by associating yourself with other famous people. So no, the game didn't sanitize the origins of Kim's career by not talking about the sex tape, because the sex tape isn't the thing that made her so famous. This is just kind of like the lip gloss thing all over again. You could just as easily say Kim Kardashian got famous off of a murder trial as you could say she got famous from a sex tape, and in fact, it would actually be a bit more accurate and a lot more cutting. If you're trying to argue Kim hasn't personally done anything to achieve her fame, bringing up that she was born into a family with industry connections, whose name first came to prominence because of a case her dad worked on, would imply a lot less labor on Kim's part than saying she got famous off a sex tape that she herself starred in. But shaming Kim for getting famous off a sex tape lets you shame her not for being born into wealth and privilege or being a Nepo baby. Because let's face it, those accusations could be lobbied at most of Hollywood. It lets you shame her for being a type of woman that we culturally look down upon. The kind that have sex and wear lip gloss. Gross. And the kind who makes money by leveraging people's interest in her personal life. And I want to be clear, as much as I find the Kardashians fascinating, I'm not a Kardashian stan. The family does a lot of stuff that I don't agree with, things that I find utterly despicable. I don't love them, and I also don't hate them. But I do find myself defending them a lot for the mere fact that I consistently find people talking about the family in ways that are just not fair. And a lot of it is pretty blatantly misogynistic. The criticism that Kim Kardashian Hollywood received is just another example of that. One of the most obnoxious and self-righteous reviews for the game came from Dennis Semeka for the Daily Dot, who inadvertently describes what reading his article feels like in the subheader. It's like being stuck at the worst party with the worst person. To his credit, Semeka did at least play the game. The bar is really on the floor. But because he had, quote, an inkling as to the quality of experience that awaited him, he explains that he named his character Jerkoff which is his custom license plate in Grand Theft Auto Online, by the way, and decided to get quote-unquote plastered enough to sit through the experience and decide how bad the game really was. The photo used above the article's headline is of an iPhone with the Kim Kardashian Hollywood logo on it, on top of a wooden table that's seen better days, where right next to it, what I assume to be Sameka's hand holds an unopened bottle of Angry Orchard hard cider. I don't want to be mean, but this is one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen in my life. It just reeks of a man whose ego is so threatened by the idea that he might enjoy a Kim Kardashian mobile app that he has to immediately start trashing and undermining it, while also reaffirming his own masculinity by being like, I could only even play it because I drank my big boy go-go juice. When I was reading this article, I was sure that the person writing it was some sort of like incel adjacent critic with maybe some Gamergate leanings. So I did a quick Google search to see what else Dennis Sameka has written, and I found this Salon article he wrote called Why I Can't Call Myself a Gamer Anymore. The piece actually offers a pretty thoughtful and introspective look at how exclusionary the gaming community can be, especially to anyone who isn't a white cis heterosexual man. For instance, Sameka writes, I took on the gamer identity because it was easy. I'm male, I'm straight, I love first-person shooters and action games. I am the quintessential example of the way gamers have traditionally been understood. The offensive jokes and comments regularly produced by the gamer community are legion precisely because they're so easy to make in this climate of traditionally understood homogeneity. And the gamer community resists introspection when confronted by the privilege this attitude engenders. So it's a nice article. Reading it, you might think that Sameka's really turned his shit around. He went from trashing mobile games primarily aimed at women to really getting introspective about how his identity as a cis heterosexual man has influenced the way that he thinks of games. That's wonderful. But the Slant article was written in January of 2014. Here's what Sameka wrote about Kim Kardashian Hollywood 6 months later. If critics fear the influence that Grand Theft Auto might have on American life, those same people should be seeking to pass legislation to ban Kim Kardashian Hollywood, whose influence is far more insidious. To call Kim Kardashian Hollywood a game would be generous. There are no puzzles, skill challenges, or conversations that require careful navigation through dialogue choices, or anything else that would require neurons to fire or muscles to flex. You don't actually do anything other than tap on little circles or word bubbles or progress bars attached to tasks you need to complete. It's as vapid an exercise as far as video games go as Farmville, the quintessential example of the social gaming disease run amok. A search for whales who drop irresponsible amounts of money into the game, playing into the same impulses and brain patterns that motivate human beings into the worst of gambling addictions. At least in Farmville, however, you're pretending to grow food, an activity that has some sort of intrinsic value. Kim Kardashian Hollywood offers no such reassurance. What the hell, Dennis? You're stepping back from the label of gamer because you don't like how the gamer identity has enabled gatekeeping in the gaming community, but you want to gatekeep the word game? Let's note, the one thing Sameka is really complaining about when he says that Kim Kardashian Hollywood is barely a game is that the gameplay is too easy. There are no skill challenges, nothing that requires neurons to fire or muscles to flex. Basically, There's no barrier to entry. The game is too accessible to too many people with too diverse a skill set. Sameka is fine with women and queer people getting a bigger voice in the gaming community, just as long as those women and queer people interact with games the same way that men do, as a dick-swinging contest, rather than engaging in what he calls the social gaming disease run amok. And of course, anyone of any gender can enjoy any type of game or gaming experience. Plenty of women love the kinds of first-person shooter games or the overall competitive spirit of the gaming community the same ways that many, many men do. And plenty of men enjoy playing games like Kim Kardashian Hollywood, which they can tolerate without getting hammered like Sameka. And non-binary people too. Gender is a social construct. Everyone is their own unique person, and there is nothing inherently masculine or feminine about video games. But there is something very gendered about what many people consider the video game industry to encompass. And it's important to point out that that's based entirely on the history of how games have been marketed, and specifically, who they've been marketed to. So let's just talk about that. When video games first emerged as a popular form of entertainment, there was nothing gendered about them. They were dominantly made by men, but that's mostly because it was the 70s and a majority of adult women didn't have jobs, let alone jobs which required them to have a degree in computer science. But there wasn't much thought about the target audience for games, given that, at first, they mostly existed in communal spaces where everyone of every gender had an equal opportunity to play. Pong was the first massively successful home console game. It was sold via the Sears catalog and advertised to parents as entertainment for the whole family. Home consoles became increasingly popular throughout the 70s, but not with any particular group of people, or if they did, no one was keeping track. Research into player statistics was basically non-existent. By the early to mid-80s, however, the video gaming market had become oversaturated by low-quality games, costing the larger industry consumer confidence and the gaming market to crash. When Nintendo released their new NES console, they revived the video game industry using two primary tactics. One, the company became strict about what games could be released on its console, even labeling their products with the official Nintendo seal of quality, and two, they moved their products from general retail outlets to toy aisles and toy stores. Around the same time, the Reagan administration deregulated advertising on children's television, allowing children's programming to become dominated by shows promoting licensed products.
Hello, my name is Rubik.
With the explosion in advertising programming directed towards kids, brands needed to differentiate their products from competing advertisers by trying to make individual products appeal to more specific niches. The shows, ads, and products spotlighted on children's television became increasingly gendered, and the toy aisles followed suit. Not every store was literally segregated into girl and boy sections, but the basic category and target audience of each item was taken into consideration when deciding where toys got placed on toy shelves. And with the toys getting more gender-specific in their marketing, Nintendo had to decide if its new console belonged next to the boys' toys or the girls' toys. The company's research into gaming demographics did show video game consumption skewing male, but the methods of data consumption weren't super robust, and the results weren't significant enough to say that video games were either a boy or a girl thing. Even if results had skewed female, though, marketing primarily toward boys was still a safer option, since labeling a product a girl's toy will alienate more boys than labeling a product a boy's toy will alienate girls, because of the whole, cootie thing. So video game marketing targeted boys. That was the best way to differentiate the audience without completely destroying the chance of video games becoming a more general sort of entertainment. But by pivoting toward a dominantly male audience, the video game industry created a self-fulfilling prophecy. First, it targeted young boys with the NES aimed at kids under the age of 10, but considering the amount of adult gamers the earliest video games entertained, there was no reason to cap the demographic off so young. So by the release of the Super NES in the early 90s, the age range for video game marketing widened, but to continue differentiating the ads from a general user base into a more targeted audience, the gender focus narrowed until, by the end of the 20th century, video game ads were no longer just pro-boy, they were starting to get kinda anti-girl.
You are so totally whipped. I'm Brad. Let's ride a bicycle bill for two. Then we can go to the potpourri store and then go buy sheets. Would you rather be at home shooting a bazooka or watching a chick flick? Chick flick, bazooka. Chick flick, bazooka.
Let me in, Brad.
Who's that?
Brad.
I don't know.
Brad?
The aggressively macho advertising was alienating to potential female consumers. And with men as the unquestioned primary audience, the games themselves were increasingly being designed to appeal to male interests. And again, anyone of any gender can play any game. But that doesn't change the fact that men and women, on average, do tend to prefer different things in their gaming experience. Research has repeatedly shown that women are typically uninterested in shooter games or games with realistic depictions of violence, while first-person shooters and action games are regularly shown to be the most popular genres among male audiences. Women generally prefer puzzle or open-world role-playing games, often with an emphasis on social interaction, creative expression, and environmental exploration. And we tend to avoid games that are highly competitive or that require a high level of skill or time commitment. Unlike men, who have been shown to view competition as the biggest motivating factor for their playing habits. Who's to say if that's a naturally occurring difference or a direct result of the ways in which the video game industry has catered to males, making that demographic more likely to become hobbyists who feel comfortable in highly competitive gaming environments. Regardless, by the mid-90s, girls weren't vibing with much of the titles offered by the mainstream gaming market. But that doesn't mean they weren't interested in games as a concept, something proven in 1996 when Mattel released the computer game Barbie Fashion Designer. Barbie was already, of course, one of the most widely recognized brands in the children's toy market, particularly with girls. And Barbie Fashion Designer was more than just a video game. It acted as an extension of the ways little girls were already playing with their dolls. In the game, users could design clothing for a virtual Barbie who would model the player's outfit on a 3D runway. The disc for the program then came packaged with paper-backed fabric, markers, fabric paint, and small adhesive dots so users could print the patterns from the game onto that special fabric from their home printer, then cut and fold the designs into pieces of clothing for their actual Barbie dolls. The idea originated from the mind of an actual little girl who was already playing with both Barbies and computers and convinced her inventor father to take the concept to Mattel. Once the game was complete, though, retailers were hesitant to put the game into toy aisles among other Barbie products due to the belief that little girls wouldn't be interested in a computer game. Mattel launched a pointed ad campaign.
Fashion designer, computers are cool for girls. Computers are cool for girls.
Barbie Fashion Designer became one of the highest-selling video games that year, despite it being released in the year's final 2 months. The success prompted Mattel to follow up that venture with even more Barbie-branded games. Not all of them were hits, but video game developers were starting to see little girls as an untapped market in the industry. Prior to Barbie Fashion Designer, there were essentially 0 games on the market specifically targeted toward a female audience. In the year after Barbie Fashion Designer, there were over 200. Many of the titles, including those released under the Barbie brand, would be labeled pink games as they were designed to appeal to gendered stereotypes of female identity, especially related to appearance. They focused on things like fashion, shopping, makeup, etc., and they were aesthetically very pink. Titles that were slightly less hyper-feminine but still based off market research of female interests would be called purple games. Founded in 1996, the most well-known purple game developer was Purple Moon. Interval Research Corporation partially funded the company not to merely develop and publish games, but to investigate what girls were looking for in their gaming experience. Purple Moon spokeswoman Laura Deo said they were aiming to make products with a high cootie factor, things that wouldn't be anything that boys would like. Results were mixed. Much of the gaming industry was still hostile toward the inclusion of girls and women in the gaming market, and many feminists didn't like the emerging girls' game movement either, believing they reinforced gendered stereotypes. Pink games were more egregious in their hyper-feminine depictions of girlhood, but purple games were often made by newly founded indie developers like Purple Moon, which couldn't afford the kind of marketing efforts being made by companies like Mattel. After spending over $40 million on research, Purple Moon went defunct in less than 3 years following the release of their first game. Interval market researcher Bonnie Johnson said at the time, "If we had researched business models as thoroughly as we researched girls, I don't think we would have created a CD-ROM business." Mattel bought the company a month after it folded, but they only published 2 more Purple Moon titles in the fall of that year before ceasing all Purple Moon releases. And while the pink games being made by Mattel and other companies were often better marketed, they were mostly cheap imitations of more popular Barbie games. Thus, the girls' game market became oversaturated with licensed titles that game developers put little time or care into making. Games that were almost exclusively marketed toward little girls and not young women. Most of the games, then, were commercial flops, and none of them were taken seriously by the boy-dominated gaming community, which had already moved past selling products exclusively made for kids. But the girls' games movement wasn't a total failure. Even if the games marketed specifically to a female audience didn't become as successful as the games marketed toward boys, the brief success of games like Barbie Fashion Designer did, in some part, inspire a larger gaming market that was less focused on appealing to men and boys exclusively. Games which more closely aligned to the interests of women and girls were made more often, with titles like The Sims, Animal Crossing, Neopets, Nintendogs, etc. But since those games were marketed as more gender neutral than anything coming out of the girls' games movement, their popularity with women didn't really transform the idea that video games were an inherently masculine entertainment medium. The games weren't overtly feminine, which made it easier to ignore the fact that they did accrue a dominantly female audience, and the hyper-masculine gaming community had already decided what real games were anyway. No matter how popular something like Nintendogs could get, it would never be considered representative of a legitimate gaming market that was equal to the market developed around male interests. Abigail Johnson wrote for the Ontological Geek in 2016, "Although games like these got girls playing, their popularity with girls and their difference to other titles of the time, like Pokemon or Mario games, caused them to be unpopular with boys and heavily criticized. Boys who generally prefer more aggressive play didn't understand the appeal of a game like Animal Crossing, in which the player makes friends with animals in their village, picks fruits, and catches insects. Animal Crossing can be played for as little as 15 minutes, since much of its play involves checking in and keeping up with the neighbors. In an era when games like Final Fantasy VII, a game that takes 40 hours or more to finish, were widely popular, a game that encourages such short stints seems ridiculous. How could anyone be properly entertained in such a short time? This fundamental difference in how demanding of its users' time games primarily aimed at women are compared to games primarily aimed at men might actually be a huge factor in the backlash that Kim Kardashian got for the monetization strategy of her mobile game. Like I said before, the biggest motivator for people to make in-app purchases in Kim Kardashian Hollywood is to replenish their in-game energy, the thing that allows you to play for longer durations in one sitting. If you're used to playing games that require you to sit for hours at a time to make significant progress, then I'm sure running out of energy in a couple minutes seems like a scam. The game will not allow you to invest a whole lot of productive time in one sitting without without paying up. And even if you do pay up, you're not buying yourself that much more time. If you wait a few hours between tasks, though, for events that give you anywhere between 1 to 8 hours to complete, your energy will replenish. You are far more incentivized to keep coming back to the app for short durations throughout your day than you are to spend your real-life money on in-game energy that you know you're gonna run out of quickly whether or not you paid for it. The point is to integrate the game into your everyday activities, not get everything done all at once. There's this part in Dennis Semeka's review where he complains about how he couldn't buy this stray cat, which sits outside the main character's apartment door. So he writes, "The last straw occurs when I encounter a lost kitten on the street. In real life, this is the kind of magic opportunity I would cherish. I've visited several animal shelters over the years where I've met a cat who needed a home, took them into mine, and had an experience that enriched me beyond words." That's really great, Dennis, but no one asked? When I try to adopt the cat in the game, however, I don't have enough fame stars. Okay, well, they're called K-stars for one thing, so cool to see how much you were paying attention. Apparently in Kim Kardashian Hollywood, even animals blow you off if you're not famous enough. Yeah, no. That would imply your ability to get the cat is contingent on your fan count, which it's not. K-stars are not directly related to your fame level. It's just another kind of in-game currency. So yeah, Dennis, welcome to the hell that is Kim Kardashian Hollywood, where even pets cost money, unlike anywhere else. The first kind thing I've been able to do in this game— Shut up, Dennis. You spend quite a lot of time in this article comparing Kim Kardashian Hollywood to Grand Theft Auto because you like that game more. Tell me how many kind things you were doing there. And I can't do it unless I spend $5 to buy more fame stars. No thank you. I'm out. No amount of drinking is worth this. God, you're so fucking dramatic. You know what you could have done instead of paying $5, Dennis? You could have waited. I got that cat so early into downloading this game. I even got her a little outfit, and I never paid any real money for it. The whole thing about Semeka's review is that he got drunk to play the game, but that already implies he's treating it as something that he could get the full appeal of in one sitting. Unless, of course, when he was talking about being plastered to play it, he meant that he was plastered throughout his day, multiple days. In which case, don't use Kim Kardashian Hollywood as an excuse, Dennis. Get some help. It's just ironic, because Semeka's biggest complaint about the game is that it's too easy. It doesn't require any skill from its users to succeed at it. All you've got to do is just press a bunch of buttons. And yet somehow, he still managed to play the game wrong purely because he expected the gameplay to mimic games that he's more familiar with. The kind where labeling the titles games isn't considered generous. The games that get to just be games. The fact is, women and girls have always been playing video games. They just didn't play them in ways that made them easy to spot as hobbyists in the industry. If you look at the titles labeled pink games or purple games at the height of the girls' game movement, a vast majority of them are for the PC. Consoles were so heavily marketed toward men, it wasn't a given that girls would be able to play console games since so many of them didn't own a console. By the 90s, though, desktop computers were already common in most family homes, meaning PC games could be a part of most girls' lives without requiring them to purchase extra equipment. Ironic due to the name, but the Game Boy also became extremely popular with girls. In 1995, 46% of Game Boy users were women, compared to just 14% of the audience for the Super NES. For some reason, though, Nintendo didn't take that into account when running the initial advertisements for their mid-2000s portable gaming system, the Nintendo DS.
doesn't teach me. It's just good practice.
But you can't release a game like Nintendogs and not expect a bunch of bad bitches to play it. Bitches love puppies. They also love the PlayStation Portable and the Nintendo Wii. The PSP, likely for the same handheld convenience that drew them to the Game Boy and the DS, and the Wii, likely for the socially driven designs of many of its games. And where girls' games really thrived was the internet, especially through the advent of browser games in the early 2000s, with sites like girlsgogames.com, which hosted girly, unlicensed Flash player games. I have never been on that site, but I have come to learn that it holds a lot of nostalgia for women about, maybe a few years younger than me. It wasn't really a big thing when I was the target demographic. I was mostly playing the official browser games for Barbie, Polly Pocket, and My Scene, which you could play on everythinggirl.com, which was owned by Mattel. Or I was hanging out on social networking gaming sites like Stardoll or GirlSense.com. Then in the late 2000s and early 2010s, games hosted on regular social networking platforms like Facebook rose to prominence, with titles such as Mob Wars, Farmville, or my favorite, Sorority Life, which I used to play on MySpace. Social networking games then naturally progressed into the mobile games craze of the mid-2010s to today, where the market is infamously dominated by adult women, like me. So since the 90s, the number of girls who game has been on the rise, largely because games designed to appeal to us have become more accessible. But much of the gaming community still refuses to accept the average woman's interests in gaming as valid. Whenever anyone brings up the statistics that show that women and men play games at about an equal rate, much of the core gaming community will pipe in to add this ridiculous qualifier of yeah, but that's when you add in people who play mobile games and other casual games, so those don't really count. And yeah, obviously there are differences in the games themselves, but that doesn't change the fact that they are all, in fact, games. And the separation of casual gamers from core gamers isn't coincidentally sexist. The misogyny is very baked into the discriminatory attitudes that many gamers hold. And I hate to keep picking on him, but let's go back to our old pal Dennis Semeka, someone who is very aware of the misogyny present in the gaming community, and someone who likely thinks of himself as progressive in the overall conversation about women in gaming. I'm sure Semeka doesn't think he has a problem with feminine games. It's not like when he complains about the social gaming disease run amok, he ever specifically mentions the fact that most of the people playing those games are women. Nor does he use that as a reason to justify why he doesn't like them. But there is something a little odd in how he differentiates Farmville from Kim Kardashian Hollywood. Like most mobile games, Farmville has a dominantly female user base. But if you look at its aesthetics, it's far less feminized than Kim Kardashian's mobile app is. It's like The Sims, in that most of its user base is female, but the marketing is pretty gender neutral. And as much rage as Semeka clearly has toward Farmville, he cuts it some slack by saying, at least in Farmville, you're pretending to grow food, an activity which has some sort of intrinsic value. Dennis? Sweetie? There is no intrinsic value to the food in Farmville. It's not real. And I know you know that because you did write that it's food you're pretending to grow. I already think that's a weird distinction to make about a video game, by the way. It's like saying that when you play Grand Theft Auto that you pretend to commit vehicular manslaughter. Yes, obviously, it's pretend. The make-believe nature of video games is something that a lot of people will only point out when they can use it to undermine a video game that they don't really like.
You don't actually get the clothes or the hairstyles. You don't actually become A-list. You don't actually get into a club. You don't actually get to rub anything on anything else, okay?
Unfortunate, yeah.
Your avatar gets it in the freaking app.
But that's why it's sort of extra weird for him to point out the intrinsic value of this fiction. 'Cause Since when are the real-life implications of fantasy gameplay a sticking point for the overall value of the game? Especially for someone like Sameka who admits to loving first-person shooter games. What intrinsic value do those have, Dennis? See, this whole, at least you're growing food thing is just a way to differentiate Farmville from Kim Kardashian Hollywood by putting a moral judgment onto the content of the game, when no such judgment was ever called for to make an assessment of the entertainment value. I find it hard to believe that Dennis Sameka makes a habit of basing his opinion on a game on his feelings regarding how helpful the gameplay would be to our greater society if it was real and not a video game. I don't think he cares at all that a Farmville user's character is growing food instead of going to photo shoots because of the intrinsic value of those two activities. I just think that was a better way for him to say that he likes Farmville a little bit more than Kim Kardashian Hollywood because Farmville doesn't have as high of a cootie factor. Food is gender neutral, but in our society, dress-up games are seen explicitly as feminine. Why else would he be mentioning the vapidity of fashion in his review for Kim's game as a reason for why he doesn't like it? Setting aside the fact that fashion is just as legitimate an art form as anything else, even if I agreed that it was vapid, he plays games where he murders people. A lot of people are very selective in how they moralize content aimed at different groups of people. It's not just Dennis Sameka or any other dude bro in the gaming community. It's also people who consider themselves out and proud feminists. The girls' games movement received huge pushbacks from women who resented the ways that pink and purple games portrayed femininity. And some of that criticism was valid. The games being made for girls at the time could be incredibly shallow and prescriptive in how they presented girlhood, and way too much emphasis was put into trying to appeal to some imaginary idea of what the average girl wants, rather than just making games that were enjoyable as pieces of entertainment. But a lot of girls did like the games being presented to them at the time, whether or not they were based off of gendered stereotypes. We don't have to overly police every single piece of media that passes through a girl's hands because we're worried about what kind of woman it's going to teach her to be, especially when that kind of policing is just not happening to boys to the same degree. Far more conversations have been devoted to the harmful messages girls might learn from Barbie than have ever been broached about the harmful messages boys might learn from Nerf guns. Even though men with guns have turned out to be a bigger danger to our society than girls who like painting their nails and going shopping could ever be. And were the girls' games of the late 90s and early 2000s too limited in their depictions of girlhood? Yes. Could the overwhelming hyper-feminine aesthetic that most of them adopted also be problematic? Yes. But it's not like the games being marketed toward guys weren't also really limited in their depictions of masculinity. It's easy to label girls' games pink games because the color pink's association with femininity makes it stand out within a culture that consistently treats women as an other. No one's calling the games blatantly aimed at boys green games, even though so many of those games are so fucking green. Just a bunch of desaturated greens and blues and browns over and over and over again. But male audiences are seen as the default. So it washes right over us how homogenous all the most popular shooter and action video games really are when you look at them from a macro viewpoint. They look the fucking same. And I'm sure there's massive differences in them aesthetically if you really look at them, and there's probably even bigger differences in the gameplay if you actually play them. But the same is also true about the games that were being marketed toward girls. They weren't all as alike as a lot of people made them out to be. But the fact that they were all so girly means that we will just ignore the rest of the nuance. Gendered stereotypes are bad because stereotypes are bad. They put people into little boxes that human beings with all their complexities don't belong in. But by treating media that is stereotypically feminine as inherently less than and necessarily other, while masculine interests are often looked at with a more discerning eye, we make it easier to dismiss the genuine interests of many women as things not worth being taken seriously on the basis of their perceived femininity. Games like The Sims or Animal Crossing aren't seen as serious games for serious gamers, even though I'm not really casual when it comes to my New Horizons island, and there are people doing things in The Sims that I didn't even know were physically possible, but the gender-neutral marketing of those games means that a hell of a lot less people are gonna run to the comments of IGN articles declaring each of those titles' popularity is a sign of the apocalypse the way that a lot of people did following the release of Kim Kardashian Hollywood. There's a reason that Luke Plunkett could write an article calling Kim's game the stuff of nightmares, then just list a bunch of completely neutral activities like dressing up and going on dates as examples for why. Those are activities that are associated with girls. The pink and purple games of the late 90s have only recently begun to have their histories resurrected to be seen as a worthwhile field of study. Barbie Fashion Designer was one of the best-selling games of 1996. It made over $14 million in 2 months and launched a movement devoted to making games for girls, where countless titles can be directly tied to its influence. And still, Barbie Fashion Designer wasn't inducted into the World Video Game Hall of Fame until last year. It took until 2018 for it to even get its own Wikipedia page, and the only reason it has that Wikipedia page today is likely due to the fact that about a week before that page was created, video game historian Rachel Simone Weil complained about its non-existence on an episode of the Adam Ruins Everything podcast.
You know, I've been almost everywhere I go and everyone I talk to, I mention this game because it's so historically important. There's, a million fascinating stories that came out of its development. I actually had a chance to speak with 2 women that worked on the game and heard, just incredible stories. And this game, I check maybe every 6 months or so, it still doesn't even have a Wikipedia article.
Wow.
Which is just, it's frustrating to me.
You could make the article.
I could.
Anyone can edit.
I could, except that most of the research is my own, and so technically you're not supposed to write a Wikipedia article using your own research.
Oh my gosh.
I know, maybe I'm being a stickler for rules here.
No. They would jump all over you on that on Wikipedia. If anyone listening to this is a habitual Wikipedia editor, please go use Rachel's work to make the article for this game.
Contact me if you need any resources.
Weil is the founder of the Femicom Museum, which works to preserve girly games, especially of the 90s and early 2000s. In 2014, she talked to The Guardian about her then-current exhibit at the Visual Arts Center in Austin, Texas, where she displayed artifacts of girly gaming history. The reality is, these games were purchased very, very inexpensively on eBay, she said. They're not considered to be collectible or valuable. What was really exciting to me was seeing on the exhibit's opening night, younger girls and women who were just running over to the case and going, "Whoa, that's cool." Something as simple as putting them in the case gave them value. Weil's work has been imperative for the reestablishment of girls' games into video game history. Without her, Barbie Fashion Designer might not have ever gotten a Wikipedia page. And while it's very cool to see how much impact one person with a passion can have, it says a lot about how girls' games are valued that we're even able to credit one woman with the reconstruction of a history that's relatively recent and means a great deal to a lot of people. Weil and other researchers like her have at least been able to preserve various PC and console games, which could be purchased on websites like eBay, and plenty of people will rediscover an old, oft-forgotten game at a thrift store or just by sorting through their old home collection. But considering how important Flash games and mobile games have become to the history of feminine media, an unimaginable amount of games made for girls have already or will soon become completely inaccessible to the public, forever. One of the main reasons the girls' gaming market started to boom via browser games throughout the 2000s is that software like Flash Player made it easier, faster, and cheaper to produce functional and accessible games for niche audiences, which somehow half the population has been relegated into. There's so little overhead for browser games that the anti-girl gatekeeping of the video game industry could mostly fall away in those spaces. There was an increased amount of freedom in the production and accessibility of girly games, but that freedom came with a price. One major cost was quality. Flash Player games were usually made fast and cheap and theoretically by anyone, which doesn't make it easier for skeptics to take the girls playing those games seriously as legitimate gamers. Another issue was the instability of online personal security. Flash Player left users incredibly vulnerable to malware attacks, which is largely why Adobe made the decision to discontinue the software in the late 2010s. And a major concern that a lot of people didn't start thinking about until around the time that discontinuation was announced is the fact that so many websites relying on the support of one piece of software run by a private company means that that private company revoking their support of that software effectively erases decades worth of history. I spent so much of my childhood, like countless hours, sitting at my family computer on dial-up internet playing girly browser games, all of which no longer exist online, at least not the way they used to. EverythingGirl.com doesn't exist anymore. If you try to go to it today, it'll redirect you to the URL shop.mattel.com/pages/Barbie, where the only thing you can do is buy Barbie dolls. You can still visit those sites on the Wayback Machine, but since they all required Flash Player, which was rendered inoperable in January of 2021, just trying to access the sites is next to impossible. Even if you're using the Flash Player emulator Ruffle, since you don't have Flash Player itself on your browser anymore, Flash Player heavy web pages will often redirect you to a page telling you to download and or update your Flash Player, which you literally cannot do. Now, if you know what you're looking for, you can just use the sitemap on the Wayback Machine. Even then though, functionality is often compromised on the pages themselves, and the navigational experience is just incredibly frustrating. If you don't care about the websites themselves, you just want to play the individual games, sites like New Mookie contain copies of some of the most popular browser games from the 2000s and 2010s. I think you still need Ruffle to emulate Flash Player in order to play them, but Ruffle is a free extension, so just get it. And then you can play a lot of the games that way. At least, for now. If Ruffle goes away, or if sites like the Wayback Machine stop enabling its use, countless games and web pages will just disappear until someone else makes a different Flash Player emulator that then other websites will again have to choose to support. Because unlike what many of our parents told us when we were kids, a vast majority of the things posted online do not live there forever. If you've been on the internet since the 80s, 90s, 2000s, or even the 2010s, your digital footprint is deteriorating rapidly. Many touchstones of your own personal memories are already gone forever, because we've all relied on the servers of private institutions to keep them active, which turns out was not a sustainable system. At least the really popular Flash games, like the ones made by Mattel, have been emulated and copied to put onto other websites. But those games are relatively easy to preserve because they are just standalone games. They exist within one little box with limited functionality, so they can be hoisted from one dying site into another site's collection pretty smoothly. But a platform like Stardoll, where the whole website is an interactive game and social networking platform, are impossible to fully emulate or preserve. Stardoll's existence is completely reliant on its owners keeping it alive. And while the website is still technically online, I decided to visit it while doing research for this video, and it's not looking good. I'm almost kind of embarrassed to show you this, even though I shouldn't be because it is not my fault. So let me preface this by saying that I didn't do this, and I'm just as shocked as you are. When I log in to my old account, which I somehow still remembered the username and password for, and I open up my suite, which is basically just like my dollhouse. The whole thing is like paper doll themed. My doll is, a different skin color than I left her. She appears to be a black woman. Upon seeing this, I was already fairly certain that at no point did I make my doll black. No matter any past cringiness or problematic behavior, 11-year-old Jasmine was not engaging in digital blackface. Never thought that was the vibe. But there was a second when I logged on and I saw that where I was like, maybe I just don't remember something? But no, I'm completely innocent here, because if you look at my doll's face, in the profile icon, that's a white girl. That is what I remember my doll looking like. And if I go to the beauty parlor and I look at my doll's selected skin tone, again, it's something a lot more appropriate to my actual complexion. And still, no matter where I select on this bar, my doll's skin color doesn't change. The game literally will not let me not be in blackface. So, that's what's happening on Stardoll. The site has also just lost so much functionality outside of that one issue. There are things here that feel like familiar, but they're fragmented and glitchy, and every once in a while, my browser will tell me that the page is unresponsive. A lot of what I remember has just been completely erased, and the Wayback Machine can't help me because it was my account. These were my personal pages that nobody but me would have ever cared enough to preserve, and considering I was 11 at the time, digital archives weren't really on the top of my to-do list. It never occurred to me that all this stuff wouldn't just be here forever until most of it was already gone. And this wasn't a super specific niche platform that only I remember, by the way. Stardoll was massive. We're talking hundreds of millions of users, plus celebrity partnerships, including from the Queen of Pop herself, Hilary Duff.
This person said, do I like fall, summer, spring, or winter? I love cheese.
Hilary's first day on Stardoll was like one of the most exciting days of my life. But I used to buy gift cards for Stardoll at just normal grocery stores. It was like super mainstream. It was a bit past my time, but in 2011, Mattel even released a line of Stardoll Barbies. And now, just a little over a decade after that, the website is completely fucked up and unusable. And I can barely even find any sort of detailed information about it or its developers. I really don't even know who made this. It's apparently made by a company called Glorious Games, but I can't find any other information about Glorious Games. Like, did they make other games or websites? I don't know. All I know is that their website is awful. It doesn't even look finished. I don't even know why they bothered making a site. Wait, look at this, look at this. Look how it cuts off right here. What is going on? I guess at least Stardoll is kind of accessible. It'll frame you for a hate crime, but at least you can go onto the website. But right in my transition off of Stardoll, I started to use GirlSense a lot more. GirlSense is a platform that completely does not exist online anymore, except for in mostly malfunctioning captures on the Wayback Machine. I was a little bit older during my GirlSense era, so I spent less time on it than I did on Stardoll, but GirlSense was like so much fucking cooler than Stardoll. Like, as upset as I am that it doesn't exist currently, thinking back to it, I can't believe it ever existed at all. See, on Stardoll, you could pick your outfits and dress your character up. On GirlSense, you could design your own clothing. Like, fully just design them. And then you could make your own little boutique where you could sell your clothes to other users. And then not only could you make your own clothes and your own boutique, you could also make the logo for your boutique, and you could design your own like banner ads that would be displayed on the site itself so that other users could know to visit your boutique. Like, most of the ads on the website were just ads for the users' boutiques. That's crazy. And I remember there being an auction feature. I don't fully remember how it worked, but all the buying and selling and stuff was all using an in-game currency that I don't remember the game ever even asking me to buy into with real money. I'm pretty sure that wasn't even an option. My memory of the site is that it was just completely free, which is probably why it doesn't exist anymore. Information about GirlSense is incredibly hard to find. The most comprehensive resource that I came across was just a YouTube video from the channel Lee Speaks. I'll link it in the description. It's a very good video and I think representative of a trend that I find simultaneously promising and uplifting while also kinda sad, 'cause it's the only people really doing the research to try to contextualize and explore the influence of websites like GirlSense or Stardoll or GirlsGoGames.com are small to mid-sized YouTubers who just have a lot of nostalgia for those websites and games. It's a cool grassroots movement, but it sucks that the education on the history of feminine media has been so isolated to just a small group of people doing their own independent research. But that research is again very impressive given the limited amount of information currently out there. Most of the Googling I did for GirlSense just led me to fans of the site bemoaning its current non-existence, with a lot of them hoping for its eventual return, which is just not very likely to ever happen. There are a couple petitions. One from iPetitions.com writes of discovering the site's closure, "I almost cried. Literally, it is like my whole childhood has been thrown in the trash." While another failed campaign from Change.org states, "A huge piece of my childhood is shattered, and it cannot be mended unless GirlSense puts some sense into what they're doing. I used the website to create strong bonds with people since we didn't have phones at that age. I helped out with a homeless/poverty center at my church around 2010-2011, and a homeless girl there whom I befriended was playing dress-up computer games. I suggested GirlSense. Once she created an account, she fell in love with it. We always messaged each other. We have lost touch 4 years ago because GirlSense closed. I would like to reconnect with her, but I forgot her name, so the only way I can do so is by GirlSense, which is gone now." That's a very specific scenario, but it's not uncommon for site closures like this to impact the real relationships of its users. In her book, Utopian Entrepreneur, Purple Moon co-founder Brenda Laurel discussed the Purple Moon website's closure in the late 90s, writing, "I was bombarded with emails sent to my personal address, which would have required some web searching from girls and parents dismayed at the closing of the company and the site. I found myself explaining bankruptcy to 10-year-olds, trying to help girls get their hands on merchandise they needed to complete their collections, and struggling to comfort heartbroken girls who lost their online friends when the site closed down. Most of them had followed the practice of not giving out personal information to people you meet online, so the only connection they had with Purple Moon postcard pals was on the site itself. All of us were devastated that there hadn't been enough time to warn girls so they could figure out another way to connect with friends they had made. Somehow Nancy Deo, Purple Moon's dauntless CEO, finagled the funds to reopen the site temporarily to give girls a chance to reconnect with their friends. That's when we noticed the miracle. During the 9 days that the site was down, it had acquired 274 new registered users. It turns out that the program was still running behind the farewell screen. Girls who had bookmarks inside the site could get in. The only way new users could have registered would have been that their friends helped them sign up from the inside, where we had cleverly installed a button labeled, "Wanna let a friend sign on? Click here." Once the site reopened, the number of new registered users quickly regained its pre-shutdown level of about 400 girls per day. The interesting thing here is that this happened without a penny in marketing expenditures. It was as if the dead rose up and walked. That brief surge in the Purple Moon website registries was obviously not enough to save the company, but I almost think that makes the story sweeter. It proves that even the girls' games that weren't profitable enough to survive still had real impact on real girls' lives. And it's a shame that so many women have had to fight so hard to have their histories remembered in a digital landscape inclined to forget them. Kim Kardashian Hollywood was a wildly successful and influential game. Whatever your thoughts on the Kardashians are, the family's impact on pop culture and our greater human society is too massive to ignore. Kim specifically may go down in history as one of the most important public figures of the 21st century for her influence on marketing, fashion, social media, beauty standards, politics, reality TV, and more. And her 2014 mobile game is such a cool, interactive relic of her personal history. There's a meta-narrative around this game that I and a lot of other people find really fascinating. From its recreations of Kim's wardrobe to its inside jokes from Kardashian reality shows, to the drama that surrounds the use or lack thereof of certain individuals' name and likeness. But far more than the Kardashian lore that surrounds this app, the game has entertained millions of users, some of whom have been around since it launched a decade ago. I have been playing Kim Kardashian Hollywood on and off since 2014. I think at one point I did reset my game, so I'm not playing with my original character anymore. But the version I'm now on is at least 5 or 6 years old, and even if my interest in the game went in and out, it's still hard to wrap my head around the fact that by April 8th of this year, which maybe has already passed by the time I upload this, my little digital life on this app will just disappear. All the clothes I've collected, my little cat, my little dog, my fish, my wife, my boring-ass, unhelpful kids that I barely interact with because they don't really do anything. Because this game is 100% reliant on servers to the point where you literally can't even open the app if you're offline, once those servers get turned off on April 8th, it's all gone. Even if you never delete it from your phone, it won't matter. The only artifacts that will remain are the videos and screenshots that different users have taken of their own gameplay. Now, thankfully, a lot of players did know this was going to happen eventually, and likely soon. If you go to the unofficial Kim Kardashian Hollywood subreddit, people have been predicting the app's shutdown for about a year prior to the announcement, as updates had become increasingly infrequent. Some players even contacted the Glu mobile team directly to inquire about an impending shutdown. The very non-answer response had many bracing for the worst, and Kim's announcement via TMZ, along with the sunset notice on the app in January, at least gave fans a little over 3 months to wrap storylines up and say goodbye to their online life. It's a more public notice of the game's closure than Britney's, Katie's, Nicki's, and Kendall and Kylie's apps seem to get, but still, I don't think a longer wind-down time would have been too much to ask for. As soon as the impending closure was announced, the app lost a lot of its functionality without warning, including the Show Your Style event. Vice ran an article a few days after the announcement compiling the statements of some of the app's most dedicated users. Surprisingly, the game's #1 ranked player Anita seemed the least affected by the shutdown. Given the lack of recent updates, she'd been anticipating a closure for a while, and she never spent any real-life money on in-app purchases, so it wasn't a financial loss for her. Monica and Delilah, though, seemed to take the news harder, with Monica saying she felt like she was going through a breakup with no closure, and Delilah telling Vice, "It honestly makes me want to cry thinking about how I won't be able to open up the app and see my character. It's been me and her for 10 years. It's really like grieving the loss of a friend." Another woman who contributed to the Vice article, Maybelline, also made a viral TikTok grieving the loss of the game.
I'm telling y'all, I'm pissed off that they have canceled this game. I have been playing this game for 10 years. Look at my avatar, 10 years in the making. You see the glow on her skin? You see them freckles on her face? Look at her hairpiece. Her hairpiece match her bag. Look at her nails. And the dog. I got the dog in real life.
What's been kind of cool about this whole thing, though, is that the outpouring of people expressing sadness at the loss of this game has mostly been met with communal support. The subreddit is a bittersweet place to be right now. Apparently, I'm not the only one that loved the Show Your Style feature, because I guess over the last few months, these Redditors have been running their own Show Your Style events just as Reddit threads. It's not the same, so I don't really consider it a replacement for the apps event, but it is nice to witness a group coming together like this to at least try to recreate something they all loved. There are also just like so many posts and comments of people on this subreddit expressing their gratitude for one another and talking about how much the community has meant to them and the friendships they've made within it, which is just really, really sweet. But what's really heartwarming to me is the activity outside of that subreddit or the other Kim Kardashian Hollywood communities. I was so ready to see people who never played this game being super shitty and dismissive to the people that were sad about it going away, but for the most part, everyone's been pretty kind. Someone posted something on the data hoarding subreddit about trying to preserve the game, and there are definitely a few shitty responses, like, nobody wants this, or, are we preserving this as some sort of Ozymandian warning to future civilizations? But even those comments are mostly getting downvoted, so that's kinda cool to see. Then on a post about the game in the Lost Media subreddit, people again are being nice and sympathizing with the fact that losing a piece of media you enjoyed sucks. Of course, I would expect the Lost Media subreddit to get that. But the reaction to Maybelline's TikTok has also been met with a lot of kindness and understanding from people that have no dog in this race at all. It's nice to see people being kind and supportive to one another. Unfortunately, kindness won't bring this game back. Looking at all these old browser games and websites that have since disappeared, someone somewhere has tried to start some sort of petition to bring it back. Usually the petitions get a few, tens of signatures. It's the internet, there's always someone willing to sign something, even though 99.99% of the time, it is a waste of everyone's time. The Revive the Kim Kardashian Hollywood game petition, though, is the first one I've seen so far with thousands of signatures, and also a good amount of video testimonials in support of the cause.
I love all of my animals, my husband, my child. Her name is Brittany, after Britney Spears.
Don't delete the game, keep the game. Makes my girlfriend happy.
Yeah, hi, my name's Jennifer, and I really would appreciate it if you would keep the game, because it's not only just a game, it's a lot more. It's a place where I've met countless friends. There's a whole community of friends all around the world. This game has done so much more. Thank you.
It's still not gonna do anything, though. The only thing that could save the game at this point is if Glu Mobile, or I guess EA, since they bought out Glu Mobile in 2021, suddenly saw the app as exceptionally more profitable than they clearly do. And it's pretty hard to make the app seem more profitable when it's in a sunset phase where the users literally cannot make any in-app purchases. I couldn't give this game my money right now if I wanted to, and I do want to. So that's just fucking great. Boys didn't want us to play games with them. They made the mainstream gaming market all hostile and aggressive and mean. And then when we find our own little corners outside that mainstream gaming market to just enjoy ourselves, they call our games stupid and act like they're inherently less than just because they're girly. And then even when we start to reconstruct our girly gaming history, and Barbie fashion designer starts to get more recognition, and more YouTubers start making videos about pink and purple games, to the point that the overall conversation around games like Kim Kardashian Hollywood is quite a lot less hostile than it used to be, and people are overall a lot less dismissive and judgmental toward feminine media. Women-targeted video games will still get lost at a disproportionate rate because so many of them don't have physical copies that are easy to preserve. So fuck. Well, at least we have each other. Maybe the real A-list was the friends we made along the way. Just release a Nintendo Switch game next time, okay, Kimberly?
There's people that are dying.